This video is brought to you by Raycon. What's up, Wisecrack? Michael here. A lot of you have been very puzzled for a very long time on why Wisecrack, composed of many Dan Harmon fans, have not covered the other show he made. You know, the one without the intergalactically drunk scientist. Like our favorite grandfather-grandson duo, Community gets extremely meta on everything from Han Solo types,
I know, but I'm calling dibs on the Han Solo role before Jeff slouches into it by default,
to filmmakers' god complexes, to the very plot of the show itself.
What if Shirley came back? Would that change your disposition?
Shirley could get us back on formula, but I don't see it turning us around.
But while one might dismiss the overabundance of references as some weird flex by the writer's room, I want to suggest that something else is going on. The show is trying to tell you, yes, you, that you're much smarter than network television thinks you are. So how does Community manage to do that while also managing to be incredibly irreverent and silly? Let's find out in this Wisecrack Edition on the philosophy of Community. And spoilers ahead for Community. And before we get into it, I want to give a huge shout out to Raycon for sponsoring this video. I only come to the studio once a week for an hour or two to shoot, which means I spend most of my time home in my apartment with my fiance. During the workday, I need to watch certain shows, for research of course, or listen to music, and I just don't want to disturb anyone else. Raycon earbuds have been the perfect solution. They are comfortable, discreet, and sound just as good as any other premium brand on the market. They offer 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a compact design for a comfortable noise-isolating fit. They also come in a variety of colors and styles, so check them out today. Raycons also make a great gift because who doesn't need an awesome pair of earbuds? Now is the best time to get a pair of Raycons since their holiday deals won't last. Click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/wisecrack to get 20% off your Raycons, and hurry since the offer is available only for a limited time. Now, back to the show. Community follows Jeff Winger, a disgraced lawyer who has to attend a lowly community college in hopes of getting back to the courtroom.
The state bar has suspended my license. They found out my college degree was less than legitimate.
In the process, he becomes friends with a study group full of truly bizarre characters. The phrase cult classic gets thrown around a lot these days, almost as much as the phrase classic cult, which is often used to describe Heaven's Gate, Jonestown, and people who still watch American Idol, but I digress. Community is one of the few sitcoms that absolutely deserves this distinction. It's a show so beloved that its fans basically saved it from extinction twice. The creator has his own mythos and documentary, and it remains a part of the cultural conversation half a decade later, with that long-awaited movie maybe still on the way. One of the reasons for this status is the show's use of references, which are intricately layered upon each other.
I see we've all reinvented ourselves over the summer. A little late to the hipster party much?
A little much on the much?
It also mixes in a healthy dose of self-awareness, like the bottle episode in which Abed constantly reminds everyone that,
because it's starting to feel like a bottle episode.
and this is obviously all really fun, but what if, in its over-the-top use of tropes and references, the show gives us a unique way to explore the meaning of pop culture and our relationship with it. If we want to get a deeper understanding of why clip shows featuring things that never happened, or a loving fear of LeVar Burton,
So, do you go to school nearby?
are actually commentaries on us and how we relate to the media, we have to look at a thing called epic theater, or interventionist theater. Epic theater was a style developed by playwright Bertolt Brecht. If regular plays wanted people to leave feeling relieved that the hero saved the day, Brecht wanted them to leave the theater feeling very confused. He was living in an era in which people were consuming lots of theater, but the purpose of this theater was to provide entertainment, not to make people think about themselves and their place in society. With epic theater, he aimed to shift the art's purpose in hopes of broadening its boundaries and giving it a social function. Brecht criticized art's traditionalist tendencies, which he thought led to a constant repetition of the same stories in creative forms. So rather than appealing to the audience's hearts like most art of his time, he sought to speak to their minds. That meant using both songs, placards, and projections of ideas onto the stage to hammer home the meaning he wanted the audience to get. These plays weren't subtle works using subtext to convey ideas. They were intellectual works that put the ideas front and center. So if he were alive circa 2009, he probably would have been sick of all the multicam network sitcoms that recycled the same themes over and over without ever shaking things up or exploring challenging ideas. Of course, Dan Harmon has always seemed similarly bored with traditional sitcom tropes. From his early days of Heat Vision and Jack, into Community, and up through the modern reign of Rick and Morty, Harmon has pushed against TV's tendency to simply repeat what's worked in the past. And this means that rather than recycling the same tropes that we're used to, so that watching television is a pacifying experience, where our body melds with the couch, and our mind melds with the screen, and our mouth melds with a bowl of pizza rolls covered in queso, Harmon wants to disrupt our assumptions. And he does so by subverting, criticizing, and sometimes just straight blowing up classic sitcom tropes. Occasionally, that means using the spiritual perfection of chicken fingers to explore the dynamics of mafia films and the divine silliness of mafia cosplay.
To us, lines were for suckers, hacks, sheep. We were wolves. And we had the chicken to prove it.
Sometimes it means using a Pulp Fiction episode to actually do a My Dinner with Andre episode that explores how we can use film to make human connections.
I chose My Dinner with Andre because it's about a guy who has an unexpectedly enjoyable evening with a weird friend he's been avoiding lately.
But in both cases, the show is simultaneously having fun with classic film tropes, while also getting us to reflect on what happens when we can only make sense of our lives through the framework of these tropes. Indeed, many of the study group's best antics are the result of their inability to think outside of the rigid box of pop culture. When faced with a basic problem, the dining hall running out of chicken fingers, they turn to cultural tropes for their solution. In this case, that means going full Goodfellas and tearing the group apart in the process.
I don't believe what greedy sellouts you people turned out to be. I'm not gonna stand here and be ignored.
In a less frivolous example, Abed's dinner with Andre occurs when he can't conceive of what a standard adult dinner would look like outside of a film reference. Here, even his attempt at normalcy is completely mediated by a work of cinematic fiction.
I'm sorry, so you're ending early? Because in My Dinner with Andre, the waiter brings...
The show constantly encourages us to think critically about what we're willing to accept as entertainment, and why we're content to watch the same tropes play out over and over again. We see this in the Freaky Friday episode,
If you're worried about Abed, you should talk to him.
Right. I should talk to him.
in which Troy and Abed buy a six-pack of body-switching movies. This, of course, makes you think, how in the hell has this idea been recycled 6 different times?
Change up. 13 going on 30. 17 again, 18 again, vice versa. Freaky Friday.
But not content to merely roast a tired trope, Community uses this trope to create an oddly sweet breakup for Troy and Britta, while also bucking against the inanities of standard sitcom breakups.
Wait, are you breaking up with me?
I think so.
One of the show's underlying arguments seems to be that the reason we're served the same slop over and over is that we keep coming back to the trough without any complaints. Case in point, Abed and Troy's obsession with the fictional Kick Puncher film franchise, which is clearly a parody of the way the action genre recycles these same formulaic tropes over and over again. But through this ongoing bit, we can also see, if we're willing to be introspective, how often we too are just like Troy and Abed, letting ourselves fall prey to crappy recycled movies because of the hype. It's a version of what Brecht was doing with his interventionist style, making the audience reflect on themselves. So sure, Community might not have the same grand ambitions that Brecht had to change theater so that theater in time could change the world, but it does seem to have a clear mission: to use its extreme meta-ness to make you rethink your own expectations about contemporary media. And we think Harmon's Brechtish TV goes deeper than just breaking the fourth wall and offering meta-commentary about culture. See, one thing that was really important to Brecht was making sure his audience was always aware they were watching a play, rather than letting them get too caught up in the action. Similarly, Community never wants you to forget that you're just watching a TV show. This approach was and remains striking because most entertainment has the opposite aim, namely to make us get so caught up in what we're watching that we momentarily forget it's just a performance. This is called the suspension of disbelief, which means that the audience accepts fiction as reality so as to experience the story as real. Brecht wanted his audience to avoid this suspension, and he did so by having actors purposely deliver their lines awkwardly or even speak directly to the audience. Community's version of this similarly breaks, or at least alludes to breaking, the fourth wall. This is accomplished largely via Abed commenting on the audience.
I used the ballots to rank everyone by popularity, and I put the most popular with the least popular. I figured it would maximize each partnership's audience appeal.
And more subtly via characters discussing plot dynamics and seasons and character arcs.
We'll definitely be back next year. If not, it'll be because an asteroid has destroyed all human civilization. And that's canon.
Oh, and Abed also plays a cartoon character literally named Fourth Wall. Subtle. By refusing to let us suspend our televisual disbelief, Community deflates the significance of standard sitcom tropes. For example, in Friends, there was an audience expectation that Rachel and Ross just had to get together for the show to make sense. Similarly, in How I Met Your Mother, the show had to jump through some wild hoops to make sure that Ted and Robin ended up together. Examples like this dominate modern television and are basically a prerequisite for having a multi-season run. Watching Community for the first time, it's reasonable to expect a romantic payoff between our cocky, attractive protagonist, Jeff, and the edgy, attractive loner, Britta. But because the spirit of Brecht lives on inside the troubled bowels of Dan Harmon, they get together for a bit, and then they split up.
You want to stop doing this?
Yeah.
And then she dates another member of the gang, and then they split up, and at the end of the day, none of it matters.
Somebody's sure working her way around the table.
By doing this, Community isn't saying, see, we're not like those other shows, we're different. Rather, it's challenging the audience to rethink our assumptions about modern media and how we consume it. Like, why do we immediately expect that the relationship between the two good-looking people in the pilot will romantically drive the show? And what does it say about us? And is it a bad thing? See, it's not just that film and television has created a deep expectation that any two on-screen stone-cold hotties are eventually, inevitably, gonna bang. It's that this assumption bleeds into our real lives, leading us to assume that meet-world friendships and romantic relationships will also work like the ones we see on screen. Because while we might think that we're like Abed slowly falling in love with a mystery woman who is hearing impaired, we're more likely just reading way too much into a friend messing with us to prove a point, also like Abed. And in more ways than just this, the character of Abed is really just an exploration of what happens when we interpret our whole lives through the matrix of film and television. And while it's funny when Abed does it, the show often forces us to face up to how dark and lonely this can actually make our lives. Take the Claymation Christmas episode, which uses comforting holiday movie imagery to explore Abed's inability to cope with real-life family drama.
You're a man now. Take care of Dad. Wash your duper. Mommy's moved on. New family, new life.
His insistence on real life following a wholesome family-filled narrative makes him unable to deal with the reality that his mother has moved on and now spends the holidays with her new family. Or that time he gets set up with 2 blind dates to the Sadie Hawkins dance.
Why don't we each pick a girl and then let Abed decide, instead of making it a competition?
That's exactly a competition.
And his commitment to the guy on 2 dates at once trope.
Don't you already have a date to the dance?
Yep, now I have 2, which means I can do the classic 2 dates in one night sitcom trope. I'll get to wear 2 outfits, mix up their names, maybe hide under a table.
Leads him to miss out on the fact that Brie Larson, or a character played by Brie Larson, actually likes him. Abed's friendship with Troy follows a similar pattern. He struggles to deal with his buddy leaving to explore the world by boat with the host of Reading Rainbow. So instead of enjoying a last movie night and wishing him well, he constructs a wildly intense game of hot lava to process his emotions. He can only deal with the dramatic change once the 2 friends both die and come back as clones.
I'm not an exact replication. I have all of Abed's abilities and memories, but I'm missing his wild emotionality. Although I think I may be able to let Troy go now.
For much of the series, Abed's behavior isn't really challenged, at least not explicitly. But with the introduction of the gruff criminology professor Buzz Hickey in season 5, the show gives him a bit of tough love.
Initiate ballistic foam.
Oops.
What the hell?
Sorry.
You just destroyed 5 hours of work!
This forces Abed to acknowledge that he's using these structures and tricks of cinematic storytelling to make sense of life.
I know all the tricks and tropes of filmmaking, but what I'm missing is what I think the critics call substance.
But there's a problem. Abed's structure over substance problem can be taken as a broader critique. It asks, what happens when our whole lives are mediated via the narratives we learn from the media? Sure, we know all the tropes, the plot twists, the emotional monologues, and the heartwarming conclusions. But does any of this help navigate our real lives away from the screen? This seems to be the ultimate Brechtian challenge offered to us by Community. To realize that maybe some of the problems in our lives are caused, at least partially, by our internalization of the media we consume. And to realize that the media will keep feeding us this type of thing because it thinks that's all we're capable of. But like the study group, we're actually smarter than the TV thinks we are. As a result, Community is able to call both the audience's assumptions and the media's recycled tropes into question. And by doing so, just like Brecht's theater, it just might be making us a little more critically engaged and aware. So next time someone asks you who your favorite early 20th century German experimental playwright is, just scream, Dan Harmon, and then run away before they can call it into question. But what do you guys think? Is Dan Harmon the new Bertolt Brecht? Are we all a little bit like Abed? Let us know in the comments. Hit that subscribe button like you're using the last of your paintballs to defeat your rival college. And ring that bell like it's time for Anthropology 101 with John Oliver. Huge thanks to our patrons for all your support. And as always, thanks for watching. Later.